This is TWiT.
Computer-generated content continues to gain different definitions of today. We have amazing graphics, a la CGI, shown in most of the blockbuster films that we enjoy. And we also have AI tools built into some of our creative apps, such as Photoshop and After Effects. This is a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? Okay. So what about suggested texts in our emails and in the DMs that we send throughout today? Joining us today is Joss Fogg, and she has a fascinating piece from Rico discussing this matter. Hello, Miss Joss. How you doing?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Appreciate you joining us. Your piece up on Recode was pretty fascinating, and it struck a chord with me a little bit because I didn't think about the predictive text that we have in email and in text messaging, and put that towards, what would an author do or a computer-generated author do as far as creating a story, an article, or anything like that. What are your thoughts on this? Can you share a little bit more about your story from Recode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a video that we published, Recode with Vox, and it's interesting because there hasn't been really a reason to think about it in that context, because this is the ability to sort of predict full sentences, full paragraphs, even full stories is very new. So the kind of technology that we have in our cell phones, which is predictive texting that everyone has had some experience with, I personally don't find it all that useful. But there are a lot of memes where people will sort of be like, start your text with this and see how it finishes it. And does it say something about you?
Yeah.
And the technology behind that is a language model, and it's basically just a computer program that has sort of a sense of the statistical use of various words. And the ones that we have in our cell phones have to be pretty small because, they have to fit on our phones. Right. But the ones that researchers are using now are gigantic. And that has meant that they can produce text that is incredibly plausible over several paragraphs. So this one that we're looking at from my story is basically a fake news article that was written entirely by a machine, and it was programmed. The algorithm was programmed by an author named Adam Geichi, who does sort of blog posts about machine learning, and he's got a whole website called News You Can't Use that is just news generated by a computer.
Let's see. It's fascinating looking at the world of AI, and I've always had my sort of a gripe with it because AI could be super duper useful, but there are going to be times where it's not properly trained and can lead to issues with information being just flat out false or just sort of missing the mark, if you will. Now, if you look at the texting world, like you said, there's the meme of start a text message and see what the predictive text comes up with right after that. What about using that for, say, like a fantasy book or something, sort of off the wall, like a comedy or what have you? Do you think there are authors out there thinking along those lines to say, let's try this and see if we can make a funny story out of it?
There definitely are. And that's what I think are some of the more interesting uses of this particular type of technology is the creative ones. So there is a game called AI Dungeon. It's basically a text game where you can interact with this algorithm in a way that the two of you are together building a fantasy story. So you'll give it a little prompt, and then it will kind of build off of that, and then you can say a little bit more, and you kind of go back and forth. And the sort of coherence and fluency of the output from those is just so far beyond what was possible even a year ago, and certainly 3 years ago, when we used to see some experiments with AI-generated text. I remember there being a screenplay written by, AI, and they had some, kind of big name actors sort of perform it, and it just was nonsensical. And that's why it was funny, is that the grammar wasn't there, the logic certainly wasn't there, no consistent ideas, no consistent characters. The ability to do that is just started as of 2019.
That's fascinating. Now, if we were to look at this from, how do I want to put this? With it being a little bit messed up and wonky at times, what is in place to try to make this better? And is this something that we could potentially lean on in the future as it gets better? Have you seen any research or discussion about that?
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate how good it is. It can't write the way humans write. It can't do research. Like, it can't come up with, accurate stories. It can just sort of mimic our language use because it understands the statistics of which words we sort of put together frequently.
So you're saying all of us bloggers are safe, right?
I really think that people that produce original content that includes sort of research, reporting, I think that it's going to be a long time before any computer can do that. What they can do now is create kind of nonsense. And I mean, in a nicer way to put it, art. And as researchers sort of work to mold these, they can probably be able to summarize documents with this kind of technology better than they ever have before. So you give it sort of an existing set of text, and it will give you sort of an original condensed version of that information. That might be possible quite soon. Question answering, where you give it a document and then ask it a question based on the content in that document, which is probably going to be useful for a lot of businesses, for customer support and chatbot applications. So I don't think real writers and journalists are going to have their jobs threatened by this kind of thing. If anything, the proliferation of fake text might make people sort of seek established publishers as sort of a refuge from the chaos that could be unleashed with these kinds of technologies.
I don't know why, but with it being the election year, it seems like I could see someone trying to leverage this as part of their mudslinging across the party lines or something like that. Just nonsensical gibberish published out there that yet will continue to get a ton of clicks and reads and shares and things like that.
Given our predisposition to just read headlines, I think that
right.
is not a surprise. If you see that there's a whole article there, and you read the headline, you see that there's a whole article there, you kind of just go, okay, well, I'm sure the facts are in there, and then you just go off of the headline. I kind of want to double down, though. I want to, somebody coming into this going, why did we make this? Why was this created? And, as it's noted, it's not a malicious intent from the beginning. Instead, there was a purpose for the creation of these kinds of these tools, which you outline in the article. Do you want to talk about natural language processing and what we wanted to do with it?
Yeah. So some of the kind of the big branches of AI are like, can we teach a machine to see? And that's sort of like image processing. And then can we teach them language? And for a long time, sort of the language area of that has lagged behind some of the image advances. And part of that is because language is just sort of a really difficult problem. We have infinite ways of talking and different combinations of words. And so I think there has been a bit of a breakthrough in that area due to this use of what are called pre-trained language models. And the innovation is kind of that they just are using a ton more data. So they are taking a model that is trained to predict the next word in a sentence, and they're just training it on millions of websites. OpenAI's algorithm GPT-2 was trained on 8 million websites. They went to Reddit and just like followed the links of any Reddit post that had a couple of upvotes, and that volume of data made these language models better than they ever have been before. And there's also sort of a tweak that they've made to the network architecture so that they were able to use that much data. So before, language modeling was done with recurrent neural networks, and there's just some hard limits on how much data is practical to run through something like that. They switched over to this, what came out of Google's research lab actually, is called Transformer, and it allows you to process the data more efficiently, which means they can use a lot more of it. And so that's kind of opened up a lot of advances across the field of natural language processing.